What's up, everyone? My name is Ethan. Welcome to Splash City. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. Did you know that 95% of the people who are watching this channel are not subscribed? That's a really high number. I'd like to get that one down. So if you have been watching this channel for a while and you are not subscribed already, please consider doing so. It would really help me out a lot. With that out of the way, let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, who are NBA champions for the first time in 50 years. That's a very long time. And this team, they defied all the odds. They proved a lot of people wrong, including myself. I did not think that they were going to be able to do it this year. I picked them to lose to the Nets. I picked them to lose to the Suns. And, they proved everybody wrong and were able to deliver a really meaningful NBA championship. So good for them. There's still some moves to be made this offseason, a couple free agents to deal with. But for the most part, this team is looking in pretty good shape to be able to run this one back next year. And they're going to be contenders for a long time. Giannis is only 26. Already two-time MVP, Finals MVP, championship, Defensive Player of the Year. His resume is already insane, and he's got a lot more productive years left in the NBA. So this team is set up for success for a long time, and it was a great season for them being able to win the championship. So here's the roster. They've got their big three locked up for a long time. Khris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jrue Holiday. All of them multiple years left on their contract. Khris Middleton 2 plus the player option, Giannis 4 plus the player option, and Middleton has 3 plus the player option. So all three of them are going to remain in Milwaukee for years to come, and that is welcome news for Bucks fans, because this trio proved this year that they're good enough to win a title, and they can do it again. They can do it again. They can do it a third time. They can do it a fourth time. Not saying that they will, of course, but this team is definitely capable of winning multiple titles over the length of these contracts. And even if Middleton starts to regress in a couple of years, although I don't expect him to, even if Jrue Holiday starts to regress in a couple of years, those are potentially tradable deals, and you can reshuffle the team around Giannis and continue to compete year in, year out with Giannis Antetokounmpo as the face of the franchise. He, winning this title goes a very, very long way to keeping him in Milwaukee, not only for the next 4 to 5 years, but for his entire career. If they're able to sustain this level of success that they've had, then Giannis could definitely be one of those guys that retires in a Bucks uniform and has a nice run of success with one team in one city. So we'll see on that, but I expect all three of these guys back next year. Of course, there's no question about that. And this is a good, and this is a title-winning core, and they've proven that they can play with the best of them. Middleton and Holiday continues to be underrated by everybody. Middleton just he was a little bit inconsistent, I guess, at points during this playoffs, but he had some really big moments, and he's like the NBA's forgotten all-star almost. He's a perennial all-star guy, puts up 20 points every single night, and is just a very, very good player. We know what Giannis can do. Jrue Holiday, his shot was inconsistent a little bit in the finals and throughout the playoffs, but defensively he was always there, and that veteran leadership from him really proved vital for them down the stretch. So big three is here to stay, and that's a really, really good thing. And then after that, you start talking about the role players, and these guys were, good to varying degrees of success this year for the Bucks. Some of them inconsistent, some of them played really well, and it just really depends on the matchup and on the series for some of these guys. Specifically Brook Lopez got his minutes cut down a little bit in the finals because the Suns were trying to play small and run fast, and Lopez wasn't quite able to keep up with that. That's okay. He's still a valuable player. Maybe not quite worth $13 million. He could definitely be a trade guy this offseason if they feel like they need to, potentially get somebody else in there. He is 33 years old, and you might want to try to save that salary slot and flip that for something different, maybe somebody younger or somebody that can run in a small ball lineup. Who knows? That could definitely be an option for them, but Lopez, if he does stay on the team, he's still a valuable player. He's a quality starting center in the NBA. You can't ask for much more than that, and the money, I think, is pretty fair for what Brook Lopez provides for you. So he's definitely not an essential part of this team. Could be a trade guy, but also if he's back, it's definitely totally fine. PJ Tucker going to be a free agent. This is an interesting one. Part of the reason that he was so unhappy with the Rockets and why he wanted to leave was because that they didn't give him a new contract. They felt like they didn't want to extend him a couple of years ago, and so this one's expired. Now he's on Milwaukee, and he's going to want, I think, more than the minimum. I think PJ Tucker feels like he is worth, more than just a veteran's minimum deal, even though if that might be what his actual value is at this point in his career. So if there's another team out there that's willing to overreach and, overpay PJ Tucker, give him a deal similar to what he's on right now for like 2 more seasons, then, he could potentially be enticed to leave Milwaukee, or the Bucks can just, choose to re-sign him. I believe they have the bird rights on him, so they can bring him back for, more than any other team would be willing to go for PJ. So we'll see on that one, but I would be a little bit concerned about losing him, even though his offense has pretty much completely gone away over the last year or so. With the Rockets, he was getting a ton of open corner threes because of the system that he played in with Mike D'Antoni, and then the floor spacing that they had with Chris Paul and James Harden. But with Milwaukee, he wasn't getting quite as many wide open shot attempts as he was with the Rockets, and he just wasn't hitting as many of them. The defense was super valuable, of course, throughout the course of the playoffs, but offensively he's kind of stagnated a little bit. So not sure what his value is going to be, but I think the Bucks are going to be motivated to bring him back. Pat Connaughton is a good role player. He had some rough moments, of course, like airballing a game-tying shot, I think, something like that early on in like some of the more early rounds of the playoffs. But Pat Connaughton, had some rough moments. He's a little bit overmatched in his role, but hey, he was one of the guys that was consistently in the rotation for a title-winning team. So you can't poke too many holes in it because he was productive for them this year. At around $5 million, I think he's worth the production. You could potentially package him and Brook Lopez and get something back in a trade if you really wanted to do that. But overall, I think they're probably just going to want to hold on to him and kind of run most of this same rotation back with Pat Connaughton on the team, just because like I said, he was good for them this year. Not amazing. He's definitely not, a guy that's going to be off the table or anything like that. But I think for what he provides, I think he's okay to stay with the Bucks. Let me talk about Bobby Portis and Bryn Forbes together. We did get a report this morning that Bryn Forbes is officially declining his player option. I don't think we've had official word on Bobby Portis, but it's looking like he's going to decline it. I think that makes sense for him to do that. Both of those guys, I think, could make a little bit more on the open market than what they were making this past year. They're both very good players. They both showed their worth in the playoffs for the Bucks. Forbes is a really good shooter, and Bobby Portis just plays with that fire and intensity, and he came up big in that closeout game in the finals for them. Had, I think, like 16 points off the bench, which is really huge in that game. So Bobby Portis and Bryn Forbes, I think both are guys that the Bucks are going to want to bring back as well, and they might need to give them a raise to do so. Given that they just won the championship, I think they might be willing to pay these guys a little bit of money to return. Not sure exactly what the deal is going to be, but maybe like a 2 to 3 deal worth maybe like 8 or 9 annually for Portis sounds about right. And then Bryn Forbes might be a little bit cheaper than that, but the shooting could raise his value up a little bit. So we'll see on both of those two. But good role players that the Bucks should want back. And if you lose them, your rotation becomes that much shorter, and that's not great. Dante DiVincenzo missed most of the playoffs after suffering an injury, and they did miss him. Obviously they were able to win the title without him, but he is still a good player, and he provides some nice scoring and shooting off the bench for them, or whether he's starting or off the bench or whatever his role is. DiVincenzo's a good player, and he's actually rookie extension eligible right now, entering the final year of his rookie contract. So we'll see if they want to give him an extension right now. It's kind of a weird thing with him because there was the rumored, of course, the Bogdanovich trade that fell through, and DiVincenzo would have been a piece going back to the Kings with that one. So maybe he feels like the Bucks don't value him, or maybe it's just been a year and he's ready to let that one go. I'm not sure how he feels exactly about Milwaukee kind of, very nearly trading him and being willing to, but then ultimately that trade gets pulled off the table and he's back with the Bucks. So we'll see on DiVincenzo. An extension for him would probably be around like 12 to 15 million per year, something like that. DiVincenzo's a good player, like I said, and I think that he makes sense on this roster, and they did miss him in the playoffs. Like I said, they're fine without him, but especially if you're going to lose potentially Bobby Portis, Bryn Forbes, PJ Tucker, maybe not all three of them, but 1 or 2 of those guys, that becomes more important to bring DiVincenzo back to kind of fill those spots in the rotation. Could he potentially be a trade guy? Yeah, if you're looking to make up value, and like I said, they were willing to include him in a trade last offseason, so I don't see why anything would have changed with that now. If you're trading for a guy who really moves the needle, I think that you can package him, Pat Connaughton, Brook Lopez, and that's that's a decent deal, and as well as future firsts, even though they traded most of them for Jrue Holiday, so maybe second round picks or whatever that is. But you could package those 3 and potentially get something decent back for them, and that would be a move that I would not be shocked that the Bucks would make. I don't think they really necessarily need to, given that they did just win the NBA Finals with this roster, but if they feel like they do need to make an upgrade, that's really where it's going to come from. Let's talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jeff Teague together, both expiring, entering free agency. Jeff Teague, they don't need him back. He was okay, and people were mad that Budenholzer was giving him minutes, but he's fine as like a backup, third string point guard on the roster, but he shouldn't be playing heavy playoff minutes like he was. They might bring him back just because Budenholzer likes him, but I don't think they really care that much. And then Giannis is actually he's not useless. You know, he's mainly on the roster because he's Giannis's brother, but he actually played this year and he was okay. I thought, you know, I would not be surprised if they bring him back. I mean, if Giannis says bring him back, then they bring him back, right? Giannis has done enough for this franchise, and the reason that Thanasis is on the team is because of Giannis. Not saying that he doesn't deserve to be in the NBA, because like I said, he's a good player, but the reason the Bucks have him is because of his brother, and so I would not be surprised if he comes back on another, you know, 1 year minimum, maybe 2 years, because he can actually play, and he was in the rotation a little bit at points throughout the regular season, and I would not be surprised to see him get an expanded role next year because he is a good player, and he makes sense with this team, I think. Then we got a couple of young guys down here: Sam Merrill, Jordan Nwora, Mamadi Diakite, and Elijah Bryant. All those guys I think are going to compete for roster spots in camp. I would expect most of them back, to be honest with you. I think all these guys are decent young players. You know, Sam Merrill was a second-round pick last year. I think he was the last pick, actually, the 60th overall pick in the draft. He's non-guaranteed for next year. You know, good shooter, and he played a little bit this past year, and I thought he was okay in his minutes. Jordan Nwora, you know, he didn't play much either, but I do think that he, you know, is worthy of keeping around for another year. Diakite has got 2 team options for the next 2 years. I expect they'll pick that up. He's only 24, maybe got some decent potential left with him. And then Elijah Bryant also is non-guaranteed. I think out of the 4 of them, Elijah Bryant's maybe the most likely to be cut, given the non-guaranteed number. I think he'll have to compete for his spot in camp next year, but I think he's, you know, worthy of taking a look at it, and if he plays well enough, then we'll probably see him on the roster next year. And then Justin Jackson and Axel Toupane, both on those 2-way deals. I like both of these guys on 2-ways, actually. I'm surprised that Justin Jackson has been bounced around the league as much as he has, because I think he has some upside as a shooter, and you know, he has got the size and stuff to be a decent wing defender, at least theoretically. So Justin Jackson, I think, should be a guy that you would bring back on a 2-way contract. He, I think, only appeared in 1 game for the Bucks this past year, so hasn't played much, but I think that they would, you know, probably want to bring him back in case he ever turns into something. And then Toupane is also a guy who's been, you know, been around the league for a while, played overseas, and I think he's a good player as well. You know, 29 years old, you might want to give him another look and bring him up to the regular roster next season, because both those guys are decent options off the 2-way deals. So I think that, you know, all these guys down here at the bottom of this roster are going to be competing for spots in camp along with whoever else they end up bringing in, but I would not be shocked if, you know, 1, 2, or 3 of these guys actually ended up playing some significant minutes for the Bucks next season. So I think the priority for them this offseason is try as hard as you can to bring back PJ Tucker, Bobby Portis, and Bryn Forbes. Those are going to be your key free agents. Those are the guys you need to focus on bringing back, because they were all, you know, big parts of the rotation throughout the playoffs and most of the regular season as well. So I think all 3 of those guys are going to be, you know, big priorities for Milwaukee to bring back. And other than that, you can really just run back this roster. I don't think they need to make any key changes. Like I said, if they are going to put together a trade package, it's going to be some combination of Brook Lopez, Pat Connaughton, and Dante DiVincenzo. Throw, you know, the 3 of them in there, maybe with some future picks, or you know, one of the younger players at the bottom of the roster. You can get something decent back, but we'll see on that front. I don't necessarily think they need to, but that's an option out there if they want it. And then they have the 31st pick in the draft. They don't have a first round pick, but they're at the top of the 2nd round, so they can add somebody, you know, potentially. There's lots of young guys in this draft that are really, really good, right? I think their need, really maybe a backup big, or like a wing defender. You could even use another point guard. I think really they should just go for best player available and see if somebody can break their way into the rotation for next year. But ultimately, I think they're set at most positions, so they don't necessarily need to reach for any specific thing. I think just drafting for best player available is probably the best plan for them. And then lastly, I just want to give a congratulations to every player on this roster, you know, the front office, coaching staff, everybody involved with the organization, all the fans of the Milwaukee Bucks. It's been, you know, the city of Milwaukee. It's been a long time since they've won the NBA championship, you know, 50 years since their last title. And it was a crazy run this year. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I was not one that believed in this team. A lot of people didn't believe in them, but they did it. You know, they ultimately pulled through, and they were able to make something happen, and it was a really, really special year. And I think they've got a lot of success ahead of them, because Giannis is only 26, and he still has room to get better, and he's shown some areas of growth over the past year or so. The shot's been getting a little bit better year after year. The free throws were kind of a storyline all postseason, but in the closeout game, he was 17 for 19, so there's room for him to improve there as well. So I think that Giannis is going to have this team, you know, they're probably going to win at least 1 more title while he's there, you know, potentially multiple championships. I think he is that level of a player, and he proved a lot of people wrong this offseason. So huge congrats to Giannis for the Finals MVP Milwaukee and everything, and all the players on this roster. Shout out to my guy Mike on Twitter. You know what's up. Congratulations on your team. I know that you're the biggest Bucks fan on this channel right now. So congrats to everybody, and I'm looking forward to next season already, because this Bucks team has quickly become one of my favorites. Even though I was cheering for the Suns in the finals, I'm absolutely not upset that Milwaukee won, because it's a great story and a great team. So yeah, that's about all I have on the Milwaukee Bucks. Like I said at the top of the video, if you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, ring the bell if you want to, leave a comment letting me know what you guys think about the Bucks and their plans this offseason. What do they need to do in order to improve this already championship quality roster? Would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. But with all that said, I do actually want to thank you guys for supporting these videos over the last couple of weeks. This is the number 30 out of 30, finishing the offseason breakdown series. I've covered every single team in the league. You can go back and see videos for your favorite team on this channel. This is the last one, and all of them should be up and available for you guys to see. So if you want to go back and take a look at those, I would appreciate that. Thank you for the support overall in all these videos. I've seen a lot of growth on the channel over the past month or so while I've been making these, and it's been really nice to see. So we're continuing along. Nothing's stopping. We're just the draft is tomorrow. We're finishing right in time for the NBA draft, and we'll be making some draft content over the next week. Multiple weeks as we head into free agency and into NBA Summer League. So if you are, wanting to stick around and take a look at some of that content as well, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It would help me out a lot. And again, thank you guys for all the support on these off-season breakdown series. It's really meant a lot to me. So with all that said, I will see you guys in the next one.